Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Core Philosophy series. The Epistemology series officially released this Wednesday. Go check that out in my playlist section or on my home page on my channel. I have a section that is dedicated to each of my philosophy series. I have one for this one and also one for the Epistemology series. So today we will be covering the 3 arguments for clarity. Last time in Common Ground, we stated 3 arguments, and I said that I would cover those at a later date. So, here we go. So, first off, I'm going to be stating the 3 conclusions and their importance. The first argument basically concludes that some things are clear. This is important because it means that there's a reason to have this philosophical inquiry into basically knowledge and understanding and just your beliefs themselves. If some things are clear, then it means that we can actually construct coherent worldviews. This is contradictory to nothing is clear or no things are clear, which is relating back to the square of opposition. Now the second conclusion is the basic things are clear. This is very important because if you think about it, the basic things, they ought to be clear, right? Because they're basically what constructs more complex things. Because if I believe and understand the conceptualization of a water bottle and the color red, then I can lead to more complex thoughts like a red water bottle. So in this way and train of thought, it is important to know that the basic things ought to be clear. Because if the basic things are not clear, then nothing can be clear at all. Now, the third conclusion, the basic things, good, evil, and God, man, are clear to reason. This conclusion seems very similar to number 2, and number 2 seems similar to number 1, but they each have different important applications. This third one means that the basic things, being the conceptualization of maybe God or reality, time, the existence of consciousness, AI, there's just many things that are very important in the fields of metaphysics, which is typically like God, man, that's relating to metaphysics, and good, evil is relating to topics within ethics. So really this means the basic things between ethics and metaphysics are clear to reason, which reason is tied to epistemology. So this is to state that to go into those fields and to do certain things, it's going to use reason, and that's how it will be able to create arguments of reality, of nature, of morality, of basically many things. So anyways, let's get into the first argument. So first off, the first conclusion is some things are clear, which we've discussed, but now time for the argument to prove that. Well, the contradiction to some things are clear if we relate to the square of opposition here. So some things are clear. It's not directly coherent, but it is an I statement. See how some S is P is connected to some things are clear? And if you see that on that contradiction side of, now if you don't understand the square of opposition, check it out in the playlist. It explains the square of opposition in more detail. However, I'm going to assume that you have watched that episode, and I'll move pretty quick from here. So the E statement is contradictory to the I statement. Now, if you know what contradictions mean from the square of opposition, it basically means that only one of them can be true, and only one of them can be false. And it means that if you prove that one is true, then the other is false. So, or if you prove that one is false, then the other is true. So, the first premise is just stating that the contradiction is some things are clear as nothing is clear. So we're going to do a kind of form of assuming the negative and arguing for the negative, and if we disprove the negative stance or the contradiction, then we prove our initial statement. So first, we're going to be like nothing is clear until ceasing thought and talk. So let's first delve into that premise. What does it really mean? Well, let's assume nothing is clear. Now the distinction between A and not A is clear, because if nothing is clear, then that means we can't really understand if what I'm holding is a water bottle or not a water bottle. We can't understand if I am a person or not a person. We can't understand if my name is Chris or not Chris. Because if you understand a single thing ever, then it means that you were wrong. And it means that it is not true that nothing is clear. So that means the distinction between A and non-A is not clear. All thought and talk must cease, because to have a thought and to talk means to have a thought. So if you have any thought at all, then typically you're not thinking A and non-A at the same time. You're making these distinctions naturally through logic. It doesn't mean that you're going to interpret a water bottle as both a water bottle and not a water bottle at the same respect in time. That's not going to happen. But if nothing is clear and you're doing that, then it's incoherent, which means that you must cease thought, which can't be done, which then means that nothing is clear is false. Now this is called a reduction to absurdity, and it's a way of argumentation. It's like reductio absurdum is the Latin tense, but basically you take this statement and you just bring it down. What would it mean if it's this? Now what would it mean if it's that? Now what would it mean if it's that? And you keep following this process until you eventually result in this conclusion that makes assuming that initial thing that maybe could have made sense make absolutely no sense, because to assume that thing that maybe would have made sense means so many things that make far less sense. Now, the conclusion with all of this, it means that the contradiction, some things are clear, is true. So I'll let you look at this slide for a bit and follow along. I'll give you a couple seconds. Now you could also pause the YouTube video. Okay, we're now going to move on to argument 2. Now this is the basic things are clear. The first premise is that some things are clear, because that's what we stated in the first argument, correct? And that's why these go chronologically. Now if less basic ideas are clear, then more basic ideas should be clear as well. So this is basically stating that to state that a red water bottle is a red, like to state that a thing is a red water bottle, then you have to understand the more like basic ideas of red and water bottle. So, and within water bottle itself, you have to understand the basic ideas of water and bottle. Which means that you actually, to be able to say red water bottle, you have to understand 3 basic ideas to make that one statement. And this is something we all do all the time, but this is an important distinction because it means that the way that we grow our understanding through logic is incremental and chronological and rational. And this is the form of rational perceptualism, which I speak of in the Common Ground episode. I'm going to assume that you understand it. If you don't, then you can check out the playlist under Core Philosophy, and I believe it's episode 2. And Square of Opposition, that I stated earlier, is episode 3. So now, if premise 1 and premise 2 are like given premise 1 and get present premise 2, which both make sense, and we've put an argument behind premise 1, and we always do with logic premise 2, then it must be true that the basic things are clear. Because if anything's clear at all, then that thing either has to be basic or it has to be more complex, which means that there has to be basic thought that is clear to understand that more complex idea. You understand? So that means that if these 2 premises are true, then the basic things are clear, must be true. So now we're gonna move on. I'll give you guys some time to look at the argument. Now, if you have any thoughts or questions on any of these arguments, leave it in the comment section below. I'll give you guys a couple seconds until I move on. Okay, let's head down to argument 3. So, this one is the basic things, good, evil, and God, man, are clear to reason. So, first, metaphysical questions, which is God, man, come to and develop from reason. This is basically stating that to have a question, and to answer a question, you have to use reason, right? That's kind of rational. To ask a question, you usually have to have understanding of things, and you have to have a reason to ask the question. And it's kind of self-evident. Now, number 2 is also the same thing, but instead of metaphysical, it's ethical questions. Good, evil, come to and develop from reason. Now, you may be wondering why we're going this route, but I'm pretty sure it'll come clear. Now, number 3, this means that reason is more basic than metaphysical or ethical questions. Well, that makes sense, right? If you have to use something to explain something, then that means that something that you have to use needs to be understood first. And if it has to be understood first, like you have to understand the concept of red, water, and bottle to even say red water bottle, truthfully, and understand it, then reason in itself has to be more basic than ethical and metaphysical questions. And if the basic things are true and some things are true, like from argument 1 and argument 2, we then, through this line of thought, come to the conclusion that the basic things, being good, evil, God, man, or metaphysical and ethical, are clear to reason, is true. Now, this one's the most complex. It relates to not only the rational perceptualism, but also the square of opposition, the 2 other arguments. There's a lot packaged in this argument, so I'll give you some time to delve on it. And if you need any more to understand this argument and there's some confusion with the first or second argument, then feel free to rewind and rewatch it. And if you need to understand rational perceptualism, how knowledge grows upon itself, then feel free to check out that portion of the Common Ground episode, which is episode 2 of my Core Philosophy series. Now, you also can feel free to check episode 3, the Square of Opposition, for that will kind of give you leadway into this logistical thought. So, I'll give you a couple more seconds. Okay, perfect. Overall, these 3 arguments are pretty vital to the principle of clarity. And the principle of clarity is the final piece of Common Ground, which, if you have clarity, it means that you are using reason and that your beliefs are coherent and have integrity. You have reason and they follow rational perceptualism. And the idea of these arguments are not to do anything else but to kind of show you the nature of knowledge, in a way. It's to give you these 3 ways to guide your beliefs and your search and discussion with other people as a way to construct knowledge and create greater integrity in your views, and maybe, even possibly, realize that if you ever are in a situation where what you say may be wrong or your views may be questioned, like I used to be atheist, like I first was a theist because I was grown up that way in a Mormon household. Then I went atheist for a pretty long time because everybody always said that you will know from the Holy Spirit, and never actually spoke about why or any proof behind it. And then I went to theism. Now I'm in theism, I'm not in any specific category. I'll disclose that at a later date why. However, that changing of views when you see something that has more integrity and makes more sense, it's something that feels good, it doesn't feel bad. If you're pretty prideful and you're pretty... A big reason is a lot of people are very prideful. I've been raised this way. This is, to me, for me to change means that I've been wrong, which means that, like, usually that's enough for people that have a lot of pride. But that's not Nobody's going to attack you for changing your beliefs that way. It's honorable because it means that you're searching for a greater truth. You're using reason in your life to find a greater understanding of what life is and who you are within life. Okay, well, enough on this topic. Check out my other series if you're interested, and thank you for tuning in for another episode. If you make it this far, please like, comment, and subscribe if you feel willing. And Chris, signing off, and remember to always stay curious in the mystery.